John Croft here to introduce our speaker. And he really, I think, exemplifies one of the things I love about Rotary, which is you're always learning something new. Whenever you come to a lunch, you never know what you're going to hear. And I think today we're in for a real treat. Our speaker today is Mohammed Soliman, and he is a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute, where he focuses on the intersection of technology, geopolitics, and business in the Middle East and other emerging markets. He's the author of a book, West Asia, a new American grand strategy in the Middle East. He's a trained engineer. He's the director at McClarty Associates, a global advisory firm where he advises on strategic and policy matters at the intersection of technology, artificial intelligence, finance, and energy. So get ready for a fascinating talk, and turn it over to you, Mohammed.
Such a treat, and thank you so much for your generosity. It means a lot to be here. Thank you so much. So why I'm speaking to you today? Well, I have a new book, and this book called West Asia, and you can see the book in the screen next to a bunch of maps. And my objective here today is trying to reorient you about how you should think about the geography of the Middle East. I think it's a very important aspect. The Middle East has occupied a lot of bandwidth here in the United States. You have seen this with Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran. We are hearing it in the news every single day. Every single president comes to the White House, says he will pivot away from the Middle East, but it never really happens. My objective is to tell you that this region has changed, that this region is different and unique today than what it used to be historically. When people think about the Middle East, they think about Iraq and Afghanistan. When I think about the Middle East, I think about a region called West Asia, a region that's from the Indian Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea. And you can see this on the map. Those are two different maps. I don't like sides. Usually I don't like it. However, those are two interesting maps for you to keep in your mind. The top slide is basically the way that our national security apparatus defines the region. It's Iraq, it's Syria, it's Afghanistan. But the way I think about the Middle East is it's basically from the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean. You can see it today in multiple things. One is in trade. The trade volume between the European Union and India, for example, is $125 billion. But the trade between India and the United Arab Emirates is more than $100 billion. Between Saudi Arabia and India is $50 billion. Europeans were in Delhi a few weeks ago, including a trade deal, and they said that this was a milestone. That was a marker. That was a big deal. But when you actually think about the numbers, you will see that India is much more integrated with the Gulf states than we integrated with the European Union. Let's talk about demographics. The Gulf states have 8 million Indians. 8 million Indian workers work and live in the Gulf states. You send back home to India about 3% of the GDP, close to $40 billion. Just remittances coming from India, from the Gulf states to England. And the question of this West Asia is not only the question of India, it's also a question of the relationship with the other Asian powers. When we mention Asia, we always talk about China, which is true. This is the biggest story in the past 30 years. It's the rise of China to become the global manufacturing, the global factory of the globe. This is the big story. And it had a huge impact on the American economy, when it comes to the industrialization. But Asia is also bigger than the question of China. Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Indonesia, Malaysia, those are industrial powers. And now they're acting as more of a catalyst. They're a magnet. They are bringing those sort of West Asians, Gulf states into their own discourse. We see this in sales of cars. The biggest market for Japanese cars is the United States. But second biggest market for Japanese cars is Saudi Arabia.
Oh.
Biggest market for Korean nuclear equipment. So the Koreans are really good at building civilian nuclear programs. Is United Arab Emirates. We built the nuclear program for United Arab Emirates. When you're thinking about connectivity, and this is basically speaking about Italy, and I love Roma. So the airlines that are carrying all these passengers across Asia are all Gulf airlines. If you want to go anywhere in Tokyo or in Manila, or you want to go anywhere in Southeast Asia, you have to go through 3 cities: Doha, Qatar Airways, Dubai, Fly Emirates, or Saudi and Riyadh. To some extent, Istanbul and in Turkey, of course, with Turkish Airlines. So in terms of connectivity, it's actually happening even for you as a passenger. And even connectivity through commerce. Dubai ports operate the biggest number of ports globally right now. You name it. Italian ports, Greek ports, Arab ports, Indian ports, it's all went through the sort of Dubai network of commerce and trade. So the reason why I'm rehashing all of this, because I'm trying to tell you a few things. One, there's an Asian system that exists today. It existed historically, it's not new. That has always been the case before the Portuguese landed in India 500 years ago. Those sort of networks have existed, but now they have returned, and we're seeing it full display. Second, there's always opportunity for the United States to change its own discourse and deal with this region differently. There's always opportunity for the United States to benefit from that sort of change. You don't need to think about the region as an arc of crisis. You do not have to be willing to be entrenched power. America has 50,000 forces in the Gulf. We have one aircraft carrier group in the Arabian Gulf. The president was talking about second aircraft carrier group in the region. We're very entrenched in that region in ways that does not really allow us to do much elsewhere. When was the last time you heard about a new diplomatic initiative for America and East Asia, in the Pacific, in Southeast Asia? We only have the band because every single hour the president or the Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense spends on the Middle East, it's an hour less spending elsewhere, and we better use it elsewhere. So in my book, after talking about the changes, the history, I'm trying to also think, I would say, deeply about how the United States could benefit from that. And the way I'm thinking about the question of this new West Asian system is through how can you work with them on creating capital flow coming from the Gulf, support some of those industrial initiatives that we have here in the United States. If we're going to go through a process of reindustrialization in the Midwest, if we need to localize some of those industries that went to Asia, someone needs to pay that capital. Someone needs to fund that capital. The same thing applies to AI. When we were talking about Anthropic or with AI or SpaceX or all those big American companies that are privately funded so far, most of the funding rounds are coming from the Gulf states. It's coming from the United Arab Emirates, it's coming from Saudi Arabia, it's coming from Qatar. So how can we create an institution that makes this much more easier and faster, much more integrated? This is one thing that I think that's very helpful for the American standard. The second thing, and this is, I would say, connected to where we are, we're in the nation capital in Washington, D.C. How can you build that coalition? How can you invest your time to build that coalition, to do more with less in the Middle East, and delegate that sort of security to a different set of players? If you're thinking about the Middle East, you're going to always think about the same Iran, Turkey, Israel. If you're thinking about as West Asia, you can bring different players to help you with the same objectives, stabilization. You can think about France, England, Italy as Mediterranean powers. You can also think about the question of India and Pakistan as South Asian powers who are close to the region, close to the energy sources that they need for their industrialization. You can think about Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Israel, as part of this sort of coalition of the willing that can help you do more with less. That's the overarching objective. How can you do more with less? How can you pivot to Asia? How can you do more in Asia without really losing your positioning in the old Middle East or West Asia as I call it? Another aspect I want to also highlight about writing the book, I had the privilege of writing it in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. It's a coastal city in Saudi Arabia. It is the air gateway to Mecca. I'm a Muslim. And it was very interesting to see the informal story of West Asia. I told you the strategic story, that this is what we need to do, this is the geography, this is the economics, but let me tell you more about the personal story. When you are in those regions, you feel you're truly in a different environment, different map. The demographics have changed, people have changed. In Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, you see Brits and converts from Central Asia, Indians, Koreans in the same city. For me, I had a blast in the Gulf because that means I can be in Tokyo in less than 8 hours flying from Dubai. I mean, this is very fascinating. And you see, this is where the center of gravity is. You see that sort of Asian businesses in Dubai. You see Indian businesses in Kuwait. You personally have to learn some Asian languages. You have to actually understand some Indian when you're in Riyadh or in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, because usually the people that are going to be helping you daily life, drivers, service people, business people, journalists will be actually from Indian descent. When you're also there, and this was on a personal level, it's very enriching that you are seeing that all these civilizations that existed before a certain moment in history are coming back again. You see this see this of course in Delhi. It's a city that I really highly recommend for all of you to visit. It's interesting, Delhi and Mumbai. I actually also advise that you should go to Dubai. You should go there by yourself, see that sort of demographic fusion, see how those regions are coming together. I always say to my friends, globalization looks completely different when you're in Dubai. I don't think you see globalization in London anymore. I don't think you see globalization in New York anymore. I think you have to go to those sort of cities because this is where you have British migrants who are leaving Britain because of high taxes. This is where we're going to see those Japanese technologists who are leaving Tokyo to go set shop over there. So it's very interesting on the personal side. You see that sort of new dynamic, new discourse. And if this all interests you, I highly recommend the book. And this is my book, West Asia. And I tried to make it not boring because I know books are boring and I need to make sure that there's a help. I'm going to talk about those sort of personal stories as well and how to weave those sort of personal stories into business and trade and geopolitics and history. So you will see also a live history about the British Empire, about the British Empire in India and the Gulf, all these sorts of maritime conquests that existed in the 15th and what does it mean for us today. I only wanted to talk for 10, 12 minutes now and have that sort of engagement with you, ask you questions, you tell me your reactions, happy to respond to your questions in any way I can.
I love what you said because it really opens the mind of every single one. Just to give you a couple of things. One is when I was in high school, we are talking about last year, we're talking about decades ago. We were not studying in history, in geography, Asia. We were studying Europe and America. Eventually South America, but that's it, no more than that. Then Africa as a continent, but not as a separated country from Africa. So the airplane become a little bit different connected the regions in the world. But still we were not studying enough about the world. And the little by little we become to open our mind. And we come to understand that other people in the world are small place where we live. And last door that got opened, and really opened the world in a very good way, was Zoom with the COVID.
Speak up.
Yeah. Zoom with the COVID. Yeah. Open the world in a way that it could not be happened before. So the airplane before, and that's the kind of very synthetic way to say it. Airplane before, Zoom after.
Let me tell you two things that confirm what you said. Historically speaking, the center of gravity economically, globally, has always been China and the ecosystem around China. This is a historically proven fact. China, until the dismantling of the Chinese Empire 260 years ago, was close to almost 40%, 45% of the global production. So this is not really new. What you are seeing today for China to become this sort of major production hub for global demand is not new. That has always been the case. Maybe different sorts of economic activities, maybe different sort of industries back in the day, but that has always been the case. Asia has always been the center of gravity. And now it's almost the turn of history. I really dislike to use the term return of history. It's almost like a cliche and everyone is using it. But truly from that angle, this is the case, right? 2/3 of the global demographics are in the Indo-Pacific. 2/3 of the global economy is in the Pacific. And not counting that America itself is a Pacific nation. The growth that we're seeing globally is basically concentrated in certain markets in Asia. Those growth stories are not coming out of Africa for interesting reasons that we can discuss. It's not coming out of Europe. You don't really see any sort of growth in the EU that will basically be sustainable. And finally, I think also to keep an eye on the production capacity that existed before the two world wars basically moved entirely to Asia. So we're getting a very interesting discourse today. And America, again, America alone is trying to do onshoring of some of those industries because policymakers left and right, again, whether you agree or disagree with the people in the White House, regardless of the party affiliations, because this is actually a different discourse for American power. We never lived in an ecosystem globally where America is a fully industrialized, fully service-oriented. So this is why you see the eagerness to do so. The second point that you said was COVID. I think COVID is a very interesting inflection point. My wife was raised in Saudi Arabia for 2 years. She's a government official, American government official. She was stationed there for 2 years. So for 2 years, I was taking the planes during COVID from Dallas to Saudi Arabia every 3 weeks. So every 3 weeks, I'm flying from Dallas, from Washington, D.C., to go to Saudi Arabia. This is how I read, this is how I wrote the book, actually. Right? So it's a very, we're married and have a baby, so I guess, well, this is why it is. And coming from D.C., coming from Georgetown, and seeing how the country is completely closed, and I have one piece of paper that basically tells people that if I'm vaccinated or not, if you can allow me to go into places or not. I'm going to Saudi when I have one app on my phone to do everything with it. COVID, you can do your Umrah, you can go to Mecca, you have everything in your life in just one app. Same thing in Dubai. Those cities did not close during COVID. So all the excellence that you see from, say, the high talent professionals from Asia and Europe flock to those sort of nations during the lockdown of COVID. So you see a lot of Chinese businesses move to United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia for that reason. A lot of Brits move to Dubai for that reason. A lot of Poles, a lot of Americans. So it's a very interesting. COVID was a very interesting moment for people because not only it was open and it was also digitally resilient. You have the internet, you have the cables, you can go there, you can work, your life is good. So those are the two things that I leave with you. This is history. This is a return of history. And two, COVID is a very interesting inflection point for how we're thinking about geography, travel, and all these things.
Okay, so most of the countries which you are an expert in are not really functioning democracies. They're mostly monarchies. The Trump administration is more interested these days in business than the expansion of democracy. But many of us in this room sort of have a international relations bent where expansion of democracy was important in our sort of, in the 80s, 90s, and earlier, in the early 2000s. Would you comment on the development of democracy in the region and what you think is impactful in your expertise? And is that a good thing or a bad thing that you're emphasizing business and not democracy?
It's a very tough question, but I'm gonna
comment.
I'm gonna give you also a real response. I think it's very fair to say that we are in completely different moments in history. I think the question of democracy is a question of the past. I'm sorry, I know that doesn't sound nice for me to say that. I think we're in a moment in history where people are looking for more for what you can do for me, how can you do my life better? Is my own satisfaction when it comes to governance and structure. And are the Gulf states democracies? No. Are they functioning? Are they offering good services for their own people? Are they making their own GDP per capita super high that people are living in really good economic standards? Yes. On top of that, truly, when I say return of history, it's also the return of some completely different governance structures. Democracy is not the end of history. Democracy in itself has been tested for so long, and when you go talk to folks in Dubai or Riyadh or friends in Delhi or other nations in Asia, they will say, well, look at what Singapore is. Singapore is not a democracy. Singapore is a one-party system. It's very functioning. Everyone wants to be in Singapore because Singapore is very functioning. When I say functioning, it's like there's good governance, right? Governance that allows you to be safe, secure, have good standing, have a good economic means, and you can basically ensure that your family has a good future. So I'm not here making the case for not democracy or no expansion of democracy. I'm saying this is the word as it is. And I don't believe that today America has any sort of capacity
to enforce that model. Because let's be frank here, we have a contested political system inside the United States. I think we are under, it's very fair to say that we have almost two countries sharing the same geographical space, fighting over values, fighting over what represents Americanness today. So that will allow us to, at least I hope, that we should deal with the countries as they are, because I don't think we're able to enforce any sort of change.
It seems at the moment that our strategy is to have no strategy. And in the traditional Middle East, we pretty much poison everything we touch, from Iraq to Syria to Libya. We leave a trail of death and destruction. So when you talk about a grand strategy for the US, why do you think we can put together any strategy?
It's a very fair critique of what you have said. I started the book telling the story of the Iraq War. I was a teenager when Iraq happened, and it was really impactful. How long it was, the impact it has on the region. So I agree with you. Iraq was a big disaster. I think it's the biggest disaster we had in the Middle East in the past 30 years. Nothing comes close to Iraq, because this is why we end up with what we have right now. Should we have a strategy? America is a great power. America has always to have a grand strategy, no matter how poisonous our political system is, no matter the differences and how radical the differences are. You have to have a strategy. There's no question. What is strategy? Strategy means that you have certain objectives and you're trying to use the bare minimum of your own resources to achieve those objectives. So we do have objectives, right? We do have objectives. Those objectives could be around energy security, could be around free trade. At the end of the day, this is a nation in the Western Hemisphere. You're not part of the Eurasian realm. So making sure that you have a favorable balance of power that's much more favorable to American power, to American commerce, to American IP, to American capitalism, was always good for you, always good for your citizens. And when I say a strategy does not mean war. Strategy does not mean war. Strategy means achieving objectives with the least amount of resources. So I am, in this book, I'm not calling for war at all. This is the complete opposite of the book. The book is talking about order building, how you can do more with less. How can you delegate to more powers to play a role around safety and security and securing maritime checkpoints. So this is the overarching objective that I have in the book.
So, Mohammed, thank you again for a very enlightening talk. And one of my takeaways was this more expanded view of the region. My question is staying on this international theme, which is, we see that the U.S. is erecting a lot of trade barriers, a lot of tariffs, and been reading recently that it's pushing other regions of the world to basically work around the U.S. and create their own regional trade groups. Do you see this version of the Middle East, as you framed it, standing to benefit from what's happening here with the tariffs and trade?
Another excellent question. Let's talk about tariffs, and then I'm going to talk about West Asia. Since 2016 or since 2015, it's very fair to say that the American public has changed when it comes to the question of free trade. There's no question about that. Polling numbers, data are confirming this thesis that Americans in so many of the American states do believe that globalization did not lead to the general benefits of the working class. Deindustrialization in the American heartland, see what we have seen in the auto industries, in steel industries, can always see that sort of the impact that trade had on people. It's real and it's deeply impactful. So we have a social aspect of it. Also, you have an economic aspect of it, which is the broader deindustrialization of the American economy. I'm not here to defend tariffs, just to make sure I'm very clear. But I'm saying so far, since Trump came down his escalator in 2015, Bernie Sanders in 2015 as well in the primary of the party, and then President Biden came in, and then Trump again, the American consensus on trade has changed, left and right. We're never going to have a president, Democrat or Republican, President Cortez or President Newsom in 2029 will not remove all those tariffs. Why is that? Because America is trying to figure out how can we manage onshoring, creating incentive structure to bring things home. And we're not bringing things home only because of the cost for the consumer. We're bringing things home, even though they're going to be expensive when you're producing it here, because you cannot have chips and semiconductors, all 99% in Taiwan, and you're even not sure if Taiwan will survive or not. And then you end up with COVID-19, when you basically cannot really get your cars, you cannot really get your microwave because we have no more chips in our own storages. So basically all our stuff are completely locked. So this is on the tariff question. I think we're still trying to figure out what's the true geoeconomic orientation from America. And tariffs, it seems to me, left and right, is a favorable toolkit for the two parties. West Asia is different. West Asia, it was not part of the Industrial Revolution. It was not. It was wealthy because of crude, because of oil. But what you're seeing right now is because of the amount of wealth and the political dedication, the leadership of the Gulf, that they're willing to front all that capital to build techno-industrial base. What the techno-industrial base means, that you're going to see the Emiratis building 5 gigawatt data centers. The Saudis are fronting all their oil money to build cables and data centers in Riyadh and Jeddah because they believe that this is their own way to elevate their position in this AI ecosystem. Is this helpful for America or not? It is helpful for America because when you go see OpenAI, Anthropic, SpaceX, their biggest funders outside of America, those basically West Asian nations who are making that big bet on America, on the American economy, because they see the American economy as the safest bet for their investment, for their capital. If you're going to go fundraise for your fund or your company, you have to go to Abu Dhabi. You have to go to Riyadh or Riyadh. Those are the places that really believe in American tech and believe in the partnership with America for security reasons, and they're willing to work with you on those sort of issues.
I think I agree with everything I've heard, which is political division, change that America's unaware of. But you mentioned a term early on that the center of the universe, the center of political and economic dynamics has always been in Asia. Americans see on both sides, both parties, expansionists, isolationists. We see the United States as the center of the universe. And we don't see ourselves as part of the system. We determine the system. We think we determine the system. And I think that is a fundamental aspect of political division. I think Democrats, Republicans, states, and the federal government, particularly the United States, is superior. We created this system. We saved the world from the collapse of the system in personal war. And we have earned our place in history. That's why Fukuyama said it was the end of history. We're going to have to suffer some more defeats or some more setbacks to our worldview before we accept the reality of what you're telling us. In my view.
This is very wise. I really appreciate the intervention. This is not a defeatist book. This is not a book that telling Americans that America is defeated or America is in decline. I'm not coming from that point of view. I'm just saying use your resources differently to ensure that you are in a leading position in the 21st century. Period. That's basically my objective. And America doesn't think of itself as a system. Part of it is, of course, the British generation, the foreign wars saving Europe from the Germans. But most importantly, it's also geography, right? The Western Hemisphere is so isolated. It's so isolating that you think that whatever is taking place in the old world, in the old map, doesn't really impact you. But it kind of does, right? Trade, AI, industrialization, demographics, those things will have a global reach because also this is no longer the 19th century, 18th century. We will have to take a very simple boat to cross the Atlantic. Things have changed, and we're no longer protected by those sort of oceans. So I'm trying to situate the policymaker to think differently about the 21st century from a position of strength, not a position of weakness.
Thank you for your presentation. I want to go back to the relationship between Dubai. You made the comparison between Dubai and New York. The globalization in Dubai and other countries in West Asia is, we can say, state-driven and strategic. In the United States was and still is market-driven. Even though we might go through a period right now of a variety of hiccups, and it doesn't matter on which side you want to look at this, the market factors will determine United States to promote what Americans believe in, and others around the world should aspire to. But without or with a leading political voice, I think that there is an institutional fragility for the long term. And this strategy, I don't know how, in your opinion, you see it, how it's going to be spread out and countries will collaborate, even better.
I never believed that America was purely capitalistic society, and the book is coming from that sort of tradition. During the big wars, America has always enacted the War Production Act. The president was able to move resources as he wishes, as he sees fit, to meet the strategic objective of the nation. You have been seeing a different industrial policy that's state-driven in the United States, right? You had the Biden White House had the CHIPS Act, you had the IRA. Now under Trump White House, you have the new push to buy big equities in some companies. I've seen this with MP Materials, the company that does critical minerals in California. So America does have that sort of streak. So I kind of not really into this idea or notion that America has always been entirely 100% free. I think the issue with Dubai is very simple. You at the beginning of Dubai, it was very rural-driven ecosystem. That is 1980s, 1990s. But 1980s, 1990s, Dubai is not Dubai of today. Dubai of today is very much private capital. Pretty much every single company, every company that comes to us here in DC tells us to go global. It means Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, or Doha. 10 years ago, it was always London. You want to take us global? We American company go global. Global meant London. Global today means local cities because you have rule of law. You have the protections you need. You can basically go move there and have a pool of talent that can be part of your executive pool for the company. So I think it's both. It's actually very similar. I think when you're thinking about Dubai, you will see a lot of resemblance of New York on the industry side, on the finance side. I have to say thank you so much. This is my fourth or fifth conversation, but this is, I would say, so far the most exciting because I think the questions were all of them were very tough. No one really held their ground. So I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for this. Would love to hear your thoughts about the book. Would love to speak to you more in person about it if you want to. My contact is there. Thank you.